everyone, thank you for joining me for day 13. And I'm just going to go ahead and dive right in because we have a lot of sections to cover here. We have calming the storm, casting out demons, healing the sick, the blind, and the possessed, and a final trip to his hometown. So let's go ahead and get started with calming the storm. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 8, verse 18. Matthew chapter 8, verses 23 through 27, Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41, and Luke chapter 8, verses 22 through 25. When Jesus saw a large crowd around him, he gave the order to go to the other side of the sea. As he got into the boat, his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a violent storm arose on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves. But Jesus kept sleeping. So the disciples came and woke him up, saying, "Lord, save us, teacher, Master, don't you care that we're going to die?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, "Silence, be still." The wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And he said to them, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" And they were amazed and terrified and asked one another, "Who then is this? What kind of a man is this? Even the wind and sea obey him." We're going to continue to read on in Matthew chapter 8, looking at verses 28 through 34, and turning to Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 20, and continuing in Luke chapter 8, looking at verses 26 through 39 as we go into the section, casting out demons. They came to the other side of the sea, to the region of the Gerasenes, which is opposite of Galilee. As soon as Jesus got out of the boat, 2 demon-possessed men from out of town came out of the tombs and met him. One of them for a long time had worn no clothes and did not stay in a house but in the tombs. And no one was able to restrain him anymore, not even with a chain, because he often had been bound with shackles and chains, but had torn the chains apart and smashed the shackles. No one was strong enough to subdue him, so violent that no one could pass that way. Night and day among the tombs on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and knelt down before him. And he cried out with a loud voice, "What do you have to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you before God, don't torment me." For he had told him, "Come out of the man, you unclean spirit." "What is your name?" he asked him. "My name is Legion," he answered him, "because we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send them out of the region. A long way off from them, a herd of pigs were there, feeding on the hillside. The demons begged him, "If you drive us out, send us to the pigs so that we may enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs. The herd of about 2,000 rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned there. Wow, so if 2,000 pigs were now possessed with a demonic spirit, that shows you how many demons were in that person. The men who tended them ran off and reported it in the town and the countryside. At that, the whole town went out to meet Jesus. They came to Jesus and saw the man who had been demon-possessed sitting at the feet of Jesus, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and told about the pigs. Then they began to beg him to leave the region because they were gripped by great fear. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged him earnestly that he might remain with him. Jesus did not let him, but told him, "Go home to your own people and report to them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So he went out and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and they were all amazed. Tony Evans points out that demons clearly know that a day of judgment is coming, but they refuse to live in light of it, and that people do that too. See Romans chapter 1, verse 32. But he's referring to where the demons recognized Jesus as the Son of God and shouted, "Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Making reference to Matthew chapter 8, verse 29. Mark's gospel has already told us about Jesus' encounters with demon-possessed people, but this account gets personal. Mark tells us what life was like for this particular man. First, he lived in the tombs. He was an utter social outcast. It's not that he had no human companions, but all of his human companions were dead. Second, he was out of control. Though people attempted to tie him with shackles and chains, he would simply break them. Because of his demonically inspired strength, no one could subdue him. Third, he endured self-inflicted agony. He was awake at all hours, crying out and cutting himself with stones. All of the man's external torture was due to internal turmoil. He wasn't merely crazy, he was under demonic influence. Like previous demons Jesus dealt with, the demon inhabiting this man recognized Jesus for who he truly is, the Son of the Most High God. As Jesus talked to the demon, he learned that there was actually a whole legion of them inhabiting the poor man. They feared Jesus would banish them, so they begged him to let them enter some nearby pigs. When he permitted them, they left the man, entered the pigs, and caused the crazed swine to rush into the lake and drown. So the demons wanted to go into an unclean thing like the pigs so that they could kill the pigs, so that they could go back into the world, so that they could go roaming around the world looking for another host. They didn't want to be completely banished, which Jesus does have the power and authority to do. Healing the sick, the blind, and the possessed. We're looking at Matthew chapter 9, verses 18 through 34, Mark chapter 5, verses 21 through 43, and Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 56. When Jesus had crossed over again by boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him while he was by the sea, for they were all expecting him. One of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and begged him earnestly to come to his house. "My little daughter, about 12 years old, is dying. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may get well and live." So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd was following and pressing against him, nearly crushing him. Now a woman suffering from an issue of blood for 12 years had endured much under many doctors. So she had this issue where she was constantly menstruating basically for 12 years straight. And doctors couldn't figure out how to heal her. She had spent everything she had and was not helped at all. On the contrary, she became worse. She was probably anemic from the blood loss. Who knows what her hemoglobin was? She really needed some iron supplements or a blood transfusion, I would think. Having heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched the end of his robe. For she said, "If I just touch his clothes, I'll be made well." Instantly, her flow of blood ceased, and she sensed in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Immediately, Jesus realized that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" His disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing against you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?'" "Someone did touch me," said Jesus. "I know that power has gone out from me." But he was looking around to see who had done this. The woman, with fear and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. "Daughter," he said to her, "your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed from your affliction." While he was still speaking, people came from the synagogue leader's house and said to Jairus, "Your daughter is dead. Why bother the teacher anymore?" When Jesus overheard what was said, he told the synagogue leader, "Don't be afraid. Only believe, and she will be saved." He did not let anyone accompany him except Peter, James, and John, James' brother, and the child's father and mother. They came to the leader's house, and he saw a commotion of people weeping and wailing loudly, and the flute players. He went in and said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? Stop crying. Leave, because the child is not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him because they knew she was dead, but he put them all outside. He took the child's father, mother, and those who were with him and entered the place where the child was. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which is translated, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." Immediately her spirit returned, and she got up at once and began to walk. At this they were utterly astounded. Then he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this and told them to give her something to eat. The news of this spread throughout the whole area. As Jesus went on from there, 2 blind men followed him, calling out, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." When he entered the house, the blind men approached him, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I can do this?" They said to him, "Yes, Lord." Then he touched their eyes, saying, "Let it be done for you according to your faith." And their eyes were open. Then Jesus warned them sternly, "Be sure that no one finds out." But they went out and spread the news about him throughout the whole area. Just as they were going out, a demon-possessed man who was unable to speak was brought to him. When the demon had been driven out, the man who had been mute spoke, and the crowds were amazed, saying, "Nothing like this has ever been seen in Israel." But the Pharisees said, "He drives out demons by the ruler of demons." So the Pharisees were accusing Jesus of being Satan, saying that he has these powers because he comes from the evil one, because they don't like what Jesus has to say, because they don't know how to handle their conviction. They don't want to change their lifestyle. They don't want to make any changes with their own heart and what they need to do. So they rather point the finger and accuse Jesus of being somebody who he's most certainly not, a ruler of demons. And finally, on our last section, a final visit to his hometown. We're going to look at Matthew and Mark's gospel, starting with Matthew chapter 13, verses 54 through 58, and Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 6. Jesus left there and came to his hometown, and his disciples followed him. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. "Where did this man get these things?" they said. "What is this wisdom that's been given to him, and how are these miracles performed by his hands? Isn't this the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? And aren't his sisters here with us?" So they were offended by him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his household." He was not able to do a miracle there, except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them, and he was amazed at their unbelief. All right, that does it for today, guys. I will see you tomorrow for day 14. So just stay prayed up, stay in the Word of God, and keep going, encouraging your faith. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.